This is the 6th edition, and I'm Neo Tagwe, coming to you live from our Abuja studios of New Central TV. Thank you for staying with us, and here are the stories at this hour. As the world marks International Human Rights Day, the Federal High Court strikes out treason charge against 11 End Bad Governance protesters. Rowdy session at the House of Representatives amid debate over non-appearance of CBN Governor Olayemi Cardoso. Burundi closes border with DR Congo following advancement of M23 fighters into eastern city of Uvira. We've got details in a moment. Stay with us. It's International Human Rights Day, and the focus is firmly on justice, rights, and accountability. December 10 isn't just another symbolic day. The impact of rights violation is real and ongoing. This year's theme highlights a right many take for granted: the freedom to speak, ask questions, and access information without fear. With over half of internet users facing some form of censorship, free expression is no longer just an ideal, it's a daily struggle. Across communities and institutions, today is a reminder that access to information isn't a luxury. It's the foundation of democracy and citizens' power. Now, here are some human rights violations in Nigeria, just a few, not all of them, from 2020. Lekki Tollgate shooting in Lagos, October 2020. Peaceful EndSARS protesters gathered at the Lekki Tollgate demanding an end to police brutality. Tensions rose as curfew orders were issued and violated. Security forces were said to have opened fire on unarmed protesters in a bid to disperse the crowd. Casualty and injuries were reported, drawing international condemnation. What followed was nationwide global calls for policing and human rights reforms. Meanwhile, the federal government and the Nigerian army debunked the allegations of massacre. Moving from there to Jangebe school kidnapping in Zamfara State, February 26, 2021, armed bandit groups expanded mass kidnapping operations targeting schools. Government Girls Secondary School Jangebe became the latest target. Security forces launched search and negotiation operations. Regional security tightened, with schools shut down across the northwest. 279 female students were abducted and later released after negotiations. This just heightened or highlighted Nigeria's worsening security and protection of children crisis. Kagara school kidnapping in Niger State, February 17, 2021, was an armed attack in the Government Science College Kagara. Students and staff were targeted for ransom. 27 students and several staff and or relatives were abducted. One student was killed, reinforcing a national fear over unchecked bandit operations. The government deployed security personnel and initiated rescue and operations, including increased patrols in Niger State's vulnerable rural corridors. Moving on to Plateau State, on June 2025, long-standing farmer-herder tensions and militia activities escalated, with armed groups carrying out coordinated attacks on villages. At least 22 people were killed, homes destroyed, and hundreds displaced. Security forces were deployed after the attacks. Government condemned the killings and promised investigation. This raised further concerns about Plateau's recurring communal violence. Now, moving on to Adamawa State again in 2025, being the latest incident, women's protest over insecurity and enforcement of local curfew rules. The troops that were deployed allegedly opened fire on the group during the protest. According to eyewitness and rights groups' account, 9 women were killed and 10 injured, sparking renewed criticisms of the military's rules of engagement. The military has denied the use of excessive force. However, investigations into the incident have begun. Staying with the International Human Rights Day, in commemoration of this day, conversations around justice, freedom of expression, and access to information have taken center stage. Stakeholders from government, civil society, and the international community are reflecting on Nigeria's progress and the gaps that still remain. Our correspondent, Marshal Abubakar, reports.
Discussions centered on freedom of expression, access to legal information, justice, and how these rights strengthen the rule of law, economic development, and democracy in Nigeria. Speakers also reviewed the Freedom of Information Act more than a decade on, pointing to persistent implementation challenges at national and subnational levels.
Across Nigeria, most police officers lack access to the primary and secondary sources of law that regulate their functions and powers. This increases the propensity for non-compliance and abuse of due process rights. It should not be the case that the only time citizens get to know about a law is when they are arrested for breaching that law. That may not be a good sense of justice.
Fight against fake news can become even an alibi to crack down on journalists and on real freedom of expression.
As a government, we are committed to protecting freedom of expression while ensuring that it is not weaponized to incite violence or undermine public orders.
We need to do better. We need to create an environment that recognizes and that protects those rights.
Advocates warn that restrictions on freedom of expression and access to information could undermine constitutional democracy. They emphasized that access to information is vital for civic participation, accountability, and socio-economic justice in the digital age.
The law allows freedom of expression. The law allows you to freely express yourself in a democratic society. But also know it that there are limitations even on the fundamental human rights.
Go out there and enlighten our people to know their rights under the law so that they can confront the authorities and demand that their rights be respected.
Generally, the atmosphere is getting better on a daily basis, except for one or two bad characters in the corrections. The system, the laws, the rules, the regulations is centered on the inmates.
As Nigeria reflects on International Human Rights Day, stakeholders say strengthening access to information and protecting fundamental freedoms remain key to advancing justice and democracy. In Abuja, for News Central, Sumaya Abubakar.
In the meantime, the Federal High Court in Abuja has struck out the treasonable felony charge against 11 End Bad Governance protesters after over a year in trial, discharging all of them. Justice Emeka Nwite ruled that the prosecution failed to pursue the case diligently, citing repeated delays and procedural lapses. A defense lawyer, Marshal Abubakar, called it a win for justice and urged the federal government to compensate the protesters for their prolonged trial and detentions.
We insisted that the right thing must be done, that justice must be served in this matter. And today, the matter has finally come to an end. The court has struck out the charge and discharged all the 11 defendants in the matter. The defendants can now go and face their lives because many of them were arrested from outside jurisdiction, some from Kano, some from Kaduna, some from Jos. And they have endured pain for just carrying out a patriotic duty of protest, joining peaceful protests.
The government has violated the rights of these 11 patriotic Nigerians, and we're asking that the government must, as a matter of urgency, call these 11 comrades and offer them appropriate remedial compensation, followed by a widely circulated apology from the office of the DPP, and that the government must, as a matter of fact, compensate them for this wrong done to patriotic Nigerian citizens. Otherwise, we should consult and take the next appropriate action against this government.
And now I'm being joined by Dr. Friday Sani, former country head, International Human Rights Commission in Nigeria, and the African regional head of the International Human Rights Commission. Dr. Sani, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
So today we're marking the International Human Rights Day, and we've seen stories, for one, that case of 11 and bad governance citizens who were on trial. But what's your take in terms of human rights across Nigeria?
Well, I will start by looking at what has happened that you have expatiated here. I think is another win for human rights struggle in Nigeria. I believe that we're not yet there, but I think with what has happened, it is an eye-opener to all security agencies in Nigeria once again to come to the reality of the fact that human rights is not a privilege. It is a right of the people.
Okay, but is it just...
So abusing it amounts to a disgrace like this, and we don't need it as a state at the moment.
Is there a problem with understanding what human rights is all about? Because it's not just, some will say it's not just the security agents that abuse human rights. Even the citizens also abuse human rights. So is there a problem as understanding what human rights are all about?
Yes, it is true that human rights is not in the custodian of government alone. It is also in the custodian of Nigerians and a human being that is alive. But when it comes to who is responsible for what, especially delivering on the protection of the right of the people, it is majorly conducted by the government. And that is why government is always at the center of human rights abuses. So I believe that should a template be properly set by the government and followed by all conventions that Nigeria is signatory to, I am very sure that what we have today will not be having it.
Okay, so before you came in, we were looking at some of the cases of human rights abuses that happened recorded between 2020 and 2025. We looked at the End SARS protest in Lagos and the killings or the shootings that allegedly happened there and those that died. We also looked at how the insurgents across the northern part of the country have also abused the rights of Nigerians, abused their rights to security, abused their rights to life. And then one would ask, in the light of this conversation around human rights with the theme access to justice, access to peace, how do we ensure, at what point do we ensure that Nigerians at all levels begin to enjoy? I know you mentioned that government needs to set up the template, but let's just say government is working on that. How else can we go about this?
You see, just like you said before, Nigerians need to understand what human rights is all about. It's like we'll continue to talk about only a particular thing. We talk about illegal arrests. We talk about injustice as what we know as the right of people. It goes beyond it. Human rights is all-encompassing, and like what we are seeing today, in fact, right in this studio when I came here, I have discovered a man who is almost falling down here because he got a report of his own child that is ill and the hospital could not accommodate him to take care of him.
That's before you entered the studio?
In the studio here, there is one of your guests here who is expressing that heavy shock. In fact, as we speak, the child cannot even talk. So instead of the hospital to be able to help, I said help. Instead of the hospital to be able to perform their duty, the hospital is not performing its duty because health of a child is a right to the child. Following all conventions that Nigeria is signatory to, it is the right of the child to access health care.
Dr. Sani, we have to go now, but I'll just ask you real quick, where is that hospital? Is it in Abuja?
ABU Zaria Teaching Hospital.
Ahmadu Bello University Zaria Teaching Hospital. And what's the child? Do you know the child's name?
No, I don't. I don't. But
well, I hope the authorities, someone in the authorities is listening or watching this. There is a child at the Ahmadu Bello University Teaching Hospital who is not being attended to, and the father, who is here in Abuja, is having heart palpitations, wondering what happened to their child. Please, something should be done real quick so that that child gets access to health. Thank you so much, Dr. Sani, Friday Sani, for coming in. Former country head, International Human Rights Commission in Nigeria, and African regional head of the International Human Rights Commission. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
I'm happy to be here.
Now to security. President Bola Tinubu has reiterated the directive towards a major review, but we'll bring you that story when we come back from this break. Welcome back. On to security. President Bola Tinubu has reiterated a directive towards a major review of Nigeria's security deployment structure, ordering closer coordination among the police, the civil defense, the NSA, and the DSS to strengthen the nation's response to kidnapping, terrorism, and other threats. Speaking during a briefing in Abuja, the president instructed the National Security Advisor to take seriously the arming and deployment of forest guards and further charged the vice president to work with the National Economic Council to identify and rehabilitate grazing reserves into ranches and livestock settlements.
So if you have any problem of security because of the nature of your assignment, please contact the IGP and get my clearance. I think the Vice President should get the neck, first of all, to see which village or grazing reserves that can be salvaged or rehabilitated into ranches, livestock settlement.
Meanwhile, a mild disagreement ensued during a plenary between Lawmaker Dickson Seriake, Senator, and the President of the Senate regarding the procedure for approving the deployment of Nigerian troops to the Benin Republic. The Bayelsa West lawmaker argued that the President's request should have been subjected to a rigorous debate on the floor to ensure greater legitimacy before approval was granted.
But, Mr. President, without prejudice to that, I have thought that with the communication of Mr. President, which has been read this morning, that we will discuss the validity and the appropriateness and add value to it, because the whole essence is for that communication to be debated, for it to enjoy legitimacy, so that everyone in this country will know, and even outside will know. So now what I'm saying is that...
Sorry, you are wrong.
Sorry?
The communication is for the Senate to give consent, for the President to act.
Mr. President.
So the communication, if you debate...
We are saying the same thing. Can you listen also?
No, you have to get... Whether you debate or not, you still come to the question, will the Senate give Mr. President consent as requested? Those in support. And the Senate has done that with unanimity.
Mr. President, we are not debating that again.
No, you can't. You can't even debate.
We are not debating that
We have
again.
closed that issue.
What I'm saying is...
We have given the President consent.
And
the Senate, all the senators here, that you see...
He's concurring with
I'm coming. All the senators here that gave consent are aware of the content of that letter.
While still talking security, the ECOWAS Commission says that an approximately 7.6 million persons have been displaced across the region. This was during the ECOWAS Mediation and Security Council meeting, which took place in Abuja, where the president of the commission, Omar Toure, revealed that the figure rose by 1 million persons between March and October 2025. Toure adds that Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali top the list of member states with the highest number of their citizens displaced. That's according to the United Nations Commissioner for Refugees and Internally Displaced Persons. Our correspondent Aishat Saliu reports.
The ECOWAS Mediation and Security Council meeting had in attendance representatives from ECOWAS member states. The meeting was an opportunity to reflect on the security challenges within the sub-region, rise in armed conflicts, especially terrorism, and efforts to curb the proliferation of small arms and light weapons, amongst others. The president of the ECOWAS Commission, Omar Aliou Toure, informed those present of the humanitarian situation in the region.
Excellency, our region continues to see grim numbers on the humanitarian front. Behind these numbers are families, women and children who bear the brunt of instability. Data from the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees indicates that as of October 2025, approximately 7.6 million individuals are forcibly displaced across the region, reflecting an increase from 7.4 million recorded in March 2025. Of this total, 6.5 million are internally displaced, with Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali accounting for the highest numbers.
The council also reviewed the situation of several states of the sub-region and the degeneration of democracy.
The recent coup in Guinea-Bissau and the attempted coup in Benin Republic are a sobering reminder of the fragility of our democratic gains. The discussions we have today must move beyond just reaffirming principles. They must generate decisions that offer real hope and strengthen the credibility of our institutions.
Events of the last few weeks have shown the imperative of serious introspection on the future of our democracy and the urgent need to invest in the security of our community.
The president of the commission commended the swift intervention of Nigeria under the ECOWAS protocols in the Republic of Benin, which put an end to a coup that toppled the democratically elected government in the country. In Abuja, for News Central, Aishat Salihu.
Now, still talking security, the Kogi State government is still enforcing a 4 p.m. curfew across several parts of the state, following a rise in security concerns and reports of attacks in recent days. Residents in Lokoja say they are adjusting to the new timeline, especially the traders, religious centers, and market leaders. They maintain that the curfew is reshaping their daily activities. News Central's Mana Balagbogo reports.
Any church, any mosque, any program that's organized or that is organizing programs beyond the 4 p.m., that center will be demolished, not only to close it down.
The 4 p.m. restriction is the latest response by the Kogi State government as security concerns continue to affect communities across the state. In Lokoja, residents say the early shutdown is now shaping how they trade, worship, and move around the city.
But say we should close 5 o'clock. That's 6 o'clock. That is the time we sell our market.
You can see every place is dry up. There's no any customer, no any turnover. In fact, the city is really affected.
Faith communities are also responding to the new directive, with churches and mosques across Lokoja adjusting their prayer times and service formats to fit within the curfew window.
So it's not so much of a limitation or a restriction within the context of a place per se. It is based on what we may call the need for the moment that won't last forever. It's even to protect the church. So it has further divided us into what we may call house to house, and then small cells of people. So the adjustment is ongoing.
We don't have any problem. We not affect our religion or about the Muslim brother, because we thank God. Every time when you see us for us, we are praying for the God that we need peace in our state, we need peace in the nation, we need peace in Nigeria.
Despite the disruptions, some residents say safety takes priority.
Business is not past our life. Anyone where government do where it don't save our life, it's okay for it.
As residents continue to adjust, authorities maintain that the curfew is a temporary security measure aimed at stabilizing the current situation, that routines can return back to normal once the threat eases. In Kogi for News Central, Morno Balagbogo.
When the 6th edition returns, we'll be joined by a security expert to talk to us about all the efforts being made and the situation at hand, how to bring it all together. Details in a moment. Welcome back. I'm being joined by a retired U.S. Army captain and security expert, Mr. Bish Johnson. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So before we went on that break, you saw the situation in Kogi, where the government has put up a 4 p.m. curfew. That's for Kogi. Again, before that, a lot of things happening right now, and efforts here and there. Would you say the efforts are coordinated?
Well, I think what is happening in Nigeria is that, of course, every government comes in with their own idea on how to deal with the insecurity in the country, which I don't think that should be the right way for us to go. I am thinking that we should have a national security strategy that spans across administrations, so that whichever administration comes in has a leg to stand on. We can't do security off the cuff. It's something that has to be sustained. It has to be permanent. It has to be sustained, because every day the criminals are also adding to their expertise. And so we have to find a permanent national security strategy that gets handed over from administration to administration at all levels, both federal, state, and local. So that way we are not doing all these quasi measures here and there.
So there should be like a document that any government coming in can work with.
There should be a national security strategy that should be inherited by every administration, the one that works. You know, we have national security strategy that is always being put in place in Nigeria, but nobody implements them. And so we wouldn't know whether if they had been implemented, whether they would have worked or not. So we have to think deep on what we are doing with that national security strategy.
Okay, so let me break in there and come here. So the president in the Federal Executive Council meeting and a recent briefing also reiterated his directive to the Nigerian Air Force and the security structure to say restructure, realign and all of that. That and even his directive to the vice president, look at the ranches and see how they can be rehabilitated. Is that also pointing in the right direction? I mean, towards what you talked about, a strategy that works.
Okay, now being that so far, nothing that worked was inherited by this administration, and that's why we're still facing. If you look very well, the same challenges we faced during Buhari time are the same challenges that we're facing now.
Yes.
Meaning that the Buhari administration did not curtail the insecurity in the country. And so this current administration now faces the same challenges or even worse. And so it means that we have to reform. We have to restructure, because whatever structure or reform that were in place in that previous administration and even the one before, it did not work. And so, but I am concerned about testing this and testing that. However, you have to test one or two things to see what works. I've seen the directives that are being given out by the president, for example, pulling the police from VIPs and redeploying them so that police people will concentrate on doing policing
work. They are meant to do, yes.
Their constitutional duty. Instead of all these chasing all these VIPs around and carrying their bags for money and all that stuff.
What about the directive to increase the numbers? Fresh recruitment all around.
You have to increase the numbers, because it's obvious that we need enough boots on the ground. We don't have enough manpower. The police, I believe, is roughly about between 370 to 400,000 policemen. That is grossly inadequate for a country the size of Nigeria, both in terms of population and even in terms of landmass. Because when you police, you're not only policing population centers, all the forests and all the uninhabited places where the criminals hide about, they also need to be policed. And so it means that, yes, there should be more recruitment. I believe that even the numbers are not even enough.
What about state police? Would that help? Increase the boots on ground?
I have been a proponent of state policing. You are aware. It's impossible for the federal government alone to shoulder the responsibility of security of the entire country. I am thinking that if at all subnational level, not just only the state, even local government should be able to have their own police. Though it shouldn't be a wild west, there should be some kind of regulation in place so that people's rights and all those things, those police forces are not abused. But we cannot say because they will be abused. Therefore, the level of insecurity in the country should be acceptable.
Okay, but I've been told that we have to go. But this matters we have on ground in Nigeria, weighed against deploying personnel to Benin Republic that has just had a bit of a shake-up and attempted coup. Is that in any way to protect Nigeria as well?
If you look at it, you can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? Nigeria does not exist in isolation. Benin Republic is our next door neighbor. If there is a catastrophe in Benin Republic, it's obviously going to spill into Nigeria and also become our own problem. So for example, Boko Haram started in Nigeria. It's not only a Nigerian problem now, it's spilled over to Nigeria's neighbors. The same thing can also happen in Benin Republic, where a security problem can start there, and if we don't take time, it will spill into our country. So that's why we can't live in isolation. Whatever we do, the best defense for us is to ensure that our neighbors are stable. So that way it gives us the room and the time to be able to deal with our own insecurity. If they are unstable, that instability may or can spill into our country and therefore exacerbate our own security situation.
Captain Bishop Johnson, I look forward to bringing you back again, but we have to go now, and then we'll look at how we can bring you back to discuss this whole matters. Now that the directive is gone for action, what's the action like? Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Bishop Johnson is a retired captain in the U.S. Army and is a security expert. Thank you again once again.
Thank you for having me.
Now, in 10 years after the tragic Zaria massacre of December 2015, survivors and families of victims continue to endure pain without justice or closure, while perpetrators are said to remain unprosecuted. This is a submission of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria as it commemorated the 10th year anniversary of the unfortunate incident. The leader of the movement in Nigeria, Sheikh Ibrahim El-Zakzaki, called on the authorities to ensure the protection of human rights of members during processions, accusing security agencies of the continuous and unlawful disruption of processions while opening fire on innocent citizens. El-Zakzaki says the group will continue to gather and carry out its activities as guns cannot frighten or silence their ideology. He also adds that they will continue to pursue the matter at the International Criminal Court through the Islamic Human Rights Commission until justice is served.
The question of Buhari is over, all right? We will meet on the day of judgment. But this government, at least they knew something wrong has been done. They ought to address it. We don't have to demand. They ought to address it. And furthermore, I've told you that they even made promise, even though secretly not open it. They made promise to us that when they come into power, they will address the issue. But the answer we have from them is silence. You cannot destroy an ideology with gun. It is not possible. This is an ideology. It's spreading. We are speaking. We are writing. And you want to shoot. What we say and what we write goes to the minds of the people and they accept it.
Welcome back. I'm now being joined by Professor Abdullahi Danladi, Chairman, Resource Reform of the Islamic Movement in Nigeria. Thank you for joining us, Professor.
Oh, thank you.
So what will the Islamic Movement of Nigeria call justice in light of this situation?
Well, justice is justice. That is to say, to put things in their proper perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is a record. History has recorded 10 years ago, whereby the federal government of Nigeria sent its military and attacked Sheikh El-Zakzaki and his followers, killing, maiming, burning, destroying properties, Islamic centers, so the damage is so numerous. Now, justice will demand, one, the perpetrators of this evil act should be brought before a court of law, and tried, established, and then punished accordingly. Those that have been killed, where can you see them to give them justice? At least they have parents, they have families. Their families need to be compensated because human life is not supposed to be wasted.
Okay, but in the light of the proscription of this group, shouldn't the Islamic movement be seeking legal clearance on this before you continue your processions and seeking for justice?
Well, let's assume, for just argument's sake, suppose you have proscribed a movement And also, this proscription came after the Zaria massacre. That is one. Two, suppose there's a proscribed movement and the movement refused to be proscribed and is carrying out these activities. What is the punishment of such a group of people? Is it just come and kill them randomly? Does that tally with common sense?
What do you think should be the right thing?
No,
if you have been told that, if you've been told that your organization or your group is an illegal,
of course, we have taken cases. Right, the case is before the court of law.
Okay,
it has been presented, and all procedures have been followed. In fact, we are only waiting for development of the judgment. But we believe somehow there are some invisible hands, because one, we believe that this proscription was wrongly done. It was not properly followed. There are procedures. We are not living in a jungle justice, whereby somebody can just come and sign a paper on behalf of the president and say he has proscribed, a group of people with their own ideology. And you cannot proscribe ideology. You cannot proscribe Islam. You cannot proscribe somebody's, understanding and conviction on a religion. However, for the sake of argument, this thing is before the court of law. We are waiting for judgment, and if the Nigerian justice is a stand, I believe such a prosecution is illegal. We have contested it, and we believe we have won the case, or we are only waiting for them to deliver.
Okay, so just before we let you go, the movement says it has the federal government, it's taken the federal government to the International Criminal Court.
Yeah.
What are your demands there? I mean, even though you said you're in court here in Nigeria, yet you've gone to the International Criminal Court.
Our case in court here in Nigeria, one, you talked about this proscription, which is there. Similarly, there are other cases that are in there. But the International Crime Court is obvious. A crime has been committed of scale and magnanimity which has not been recorded before in the history of Nigeria, whereby you meet somebody who's a group of followers, you descend on them and kill thousands. Let's take the minimal. The secretary to the federal, Kaduna State government confessed before a public hearing that they have buried 347 people. Now, what happened to these people? Nobody has been proscribed. Nobody has been punished. So what we are demanding is that, one, there should be an international and independent investigation into the matter. The chain of commands, who gave this command? Both the political and the military leaders. Now, two, to establish that a crime has been committed. And when you establish such so, then it demands for the punishment of those that have perpetrated the crime.
All right, thank you so much.
And also, the public should be made to understand the gravity of what has happened. There are people that are still carrying wounds, and imagine somebody losing her 6 children, a husband, and a niece. Such a person needs to tell the world how she has gone through, what she has gone through. There's somebody who has been fried right now. He was burnt alive by the Buhari government. Now the world needs to know why and how have these people been surviving this thing.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Abdullahi Danladi, Chairman, Resource Forum of the Islamic Movement of Nigeria. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
And we wish you luck in your endeavors. Thank you so much.
Yeah, okay.
Now, a heated argument ensued again, but this time in the House of Representatives, following a debate on the non-appearance of the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Olayemi Cardoso, before the House Committee on Public Accounts, leading the Speaker of the House to threaten legislative action against unruly lawmakers. The House subsequently issued Cardoso a 5-day ultimatum to appear before its relevant committees over discrepancies observed in the non-remittance of over 5 trillion naira operating surplus and 11 trillion naira government revenue. Lawmaker Bamidele Salam had earlier expressed concerns despite several formal invitations to the CBN governor to appear before the committee investigating the discrepancies observed in the Auditor General's 2022 financial report and the administration of the revenue collection system by the Apex Bank. This has failed. All hell broke loose when a motion was then raised to amend the request, inviting the CBN governor and mandating him to appear instead before an ad hoc committee. This did not go down well before some lawmakers, sparking outrage and resulting in a heated exchange on the floor of the House of Representatives. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, renewed clashes in the east have triggered fresh displacement as the M23 rebel group pushed for the creation of a security buffer zone. The political leader of M23, Colonel Nganga, is calling on the international community to intervene, accusing Kinshasa of obstructing peace efforts. The group has seized the key border town of Uvira, a development that has forced more than 30,000 residents to flee into neighboring Burundi.
Nous appelons la communauté internationale, en particulier le Conseil de sécurité des Nations Unies, l'Union africaine, les États-Unis d'Amérique, l'État du Qatar, la République du Togo ainsi que tous les pays de la région du Grand Lac à prendre acte de refus obstiné de Kinshasa d'établir une zone tampon de sécurité. Les territoires que nous avons déjà libérés, du Nord Kivu City, pouvez-vous les garder avec 4000 personnes? C'est sérieux. Ça, c'est de la blague. Nous disons qu'il n'y a pas de troupes rwandaises et nous disons surtout que ce conflit est un conflit congolais.
Nous avons dit et nous avons précisé que nous n'avons pas de prétention territoriale sur nous. Et nous n'avons pas d'intention d'attaquer notre voisin, parce que nous avons toujours vécu en paix avec le peuple. Nous avons demandé aux troupes burundaises de se retirer même du sol.
In the meantime, Burundi has closed its border with the DR Congo. The key Gatumba and Viguzi frontier posts were shut on Tuesday afternoon and declared military zones, as according to Burundian security sources. Uvira lies just across Lake Tanganyika from the Burundi economic hub, Bujumbura, heightening concerns over a spillover. Burundi, which backs DR Congo against the Rwanda-supported M23 rebels, took the step amid escalating tensions in the mineral-rich east, where fighting persists despite recent peace efforts. Now, the alleged leader of a failed coup in Benin Republic has sought refuge in neighboring Togo. This is according to the two Beninese government officials on Wednesday who were demanding his immediate extradition. A dispute between the two small West African nations over Colonel Pascal Tigri and his alleged accomplices would risk deepening diplomatic divisions in West Africa, which has struggled to respond in a uniformed way to a spate of coups in recent years. Soldiers briefly took control of Benin's state television station on Sunday morning and claimed they had deposed President Patrice Talon, but Benin's armed forces, backed by Nigerian firepower and French intelligence and logistical support, thwarted the attempt. Meanwhile, hundreds of activists from Benin's ruling Bloc Republicain Party have rallied at party headquarters in Cotonou to denounce the recent failed coup attempt and rally behind President Patrice Talon. The demonstration comes days after mutinous soldiers led by Lieutenant Colonel Pascal Tigri seized state television on December 7 to declare Talon's ouster before loyalist forces, backed by Nigeria, crushed the plot.
Avec l'événement qui était survenu le dimanche dernier, il y a de quoi être ici présent. On pourrait vaquer à d'autres préoccupations, mais là, c'est la République qui nous appelle. À la limite, c'est des assassins. On reproche quoi? À qui? Qu'est-ce qu'ils pourront faire? Les exemples sont légion. On a les pays de l'AES aujourd'hui. Ils fabriquent quoi? Depuis qu'ils ont pris le pouvoir, par la force, ils fabriquent quoi? Bien au contraire. Est-ce que ceux qui ont essayé ce truc-là ici, parce que je n'aime pas appeler son nom, est-ce que ceux qui ont essayé ça, est-ce qu'ils ont réfléchi à tout ça? Non, non, le Bénin ne mérite pas ça. Le Bénin n'a jamais mérité un coup d'État. Pourquoi faire? Pourquoi faire?
Si ceux qui ont tenté de pareils actes savaient l'importance qui est dedans, ils n'allaient pas l'oser. Parce qu'un coup d'État dans un pays, ça arrière le pays. Et ça bloque beaucoup de choses dans le pays.
Now in Australia, millions of children across the country woke up on Wednesday unable to access their social media accounts following the enforcement of a world-first ban aimed at protecting under-16s from addictive algorithms, online predators, and cyberbullying. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese describes the move as a proud day for families, saying it marks a shift in power away from the big tech companies and back to the parents. 10 platforms: Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Snapchat, YouTube, TikTok, Kick, Reddit, Twitch, and X, formerly Twitter, have agreed to comply with the regulation.
This is world leading. This is Australia showing enough is enough. Australians who've lost a son or a daughter, Australians who have seen the direct impact of social media causing social harm for their families, for their communities. People who have had the courage to take what is a personal tragedy and turn that into a commitment and determination that others who will follow will not go through the traumatic experience that they have.
Now, French lawmakers have approved a higher health spending target, raising the national health insurance cap to 3%, up from 2% initially proposed by the government. The amendment, which is aimed at calming tensions and boosting support for the social security budget, passed with 259 votes in favor and 64 against, giving the government a clear majority. The increase is expected to cushion the rise in hospital costs, medical staff expenses, and long-term care needs. It also marks a strategic concession by the government as it works to secure parliamentary stability ahead of key fiscal decisions. In business, South Africa's Transnet has signed a 25-year concession agreement with the Philippines-based ICTSI to overhaul and operate Durban Container Terminal Pier 2, the country's busiest container hub. The deal, which takes effect in January 2026, aims to boost capacity and efficiency at the terminal that handles more than 40% of South Africa's container traffic. Transnet says the partnership will bring new equipment and technology to improve performance after years of operational challenges that have constrained exports. CEO Michelle Phillips described private sector collaboration as key to modernizing the state-owned logistics group. Transnet will retain majority ownership of a new special purpose vehicle overseeing the project following delays caused by prolonged legal disputes over the selection of ICTSI as partner. And that's it on the 6th edition for today, but here's a recap of the major stories. As the world marks International Human Rights Day, the Federal High Court strikes out treason charge against 11 End Bad Governance protesters. Rowdy session at the House of Representatives amid debate over non-appearance of CBN Governor Lawmaker Dickson. And Burundi closes border with DR Congo following advance of M23 fighters into eastern city of Abuja. Now do send us your eyewitness reports. Send it to the WhatsApp number on the screen and follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274 on Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Neota Igbe.